it means we require a high frequency emitting probes. And if you see in this structure, high frequency probe, the wave will go and come back very quickly. I mean, frequency is very high. So, other way around, if the low frequency probe, it will go this distance, it will come by this distance. So the frequency is low and the wavelength is high. So what we need is we need a correct depth perception of the for the ultrasound to work. We need a reasonably high frequency probe, which has a reasonably short wavelength. And once the frequency is high, the wavelength is short. The resolutions becomes very good quality on the screen. So we need to select certain types of probes. So which are the high frequency probes? High frequency probes are the linear. They may be linear probes, but which gives a rectangular image on the screen. The screen image comes like this on the screen. It's but the problem with the rectangular image is that it's many times it's difficult to include the entire area of interest in single image. Then came the phase array transducers, which project the screen like this, and the probe is placed approximately around 1 centimeter above the structure, and they allow the orthogonal axis evaluation and rotation of the probe. With the rotation of the probe, you can rotate the axis and the short axis, long axis, all that. And finally, nowadays, since last 8 to 10 years, we have got matrix array probes, which are real-time 3D dimensional image equation is possible with them. We can have X-plane imaging, because once you have got a three-dimensional data set, you can post-process it into X-plane, into all sort of cropping and cutting you can do with that. So these are the different type of probes available. Mostly this is the surface probe, or what we use for the transference is the same is used. This is a linear probe. Now there are miniature probes are also available. We can which can detect a small. I mean, even a small structure can be detected by them. Even the coronaries can be detected by them. So once we decided that we are going to use a high frequency probe for this evaluation of epiaortic and epicardial, now we need to prepare the probe, because we are working in an open surgical field. The chance of infection is there. So issue comes that who should be performing. Most of the places either the surgeons are doing, or some places the surgeons are not comfortable, the anesthetists do, but very rarely we need to call the cardiologist for that. And there, as we are working in the sterile field, then somebody is working on the probe, on the structure, on the surface of the heart, then the other person has to handle the machine. So we require two people to complete the epiaortic or epicardial examination. And then it comes uh, uh, I hope can you hear the voice. This is the
Rajesh, can you switch on the audio?
no. This is the audio by Dr. Kumar, who has narrated all this thing. I hope you can you hear?
We can't hear the audio, at least I'm not able to hear it. Rajiv, can you hear the audio?
Yes, sir.
We are not.
Audio is there.
No,
Sir,
sir, we are not.
audio is there,
We
sir,
are
for
not
that.
hearing, sir.
See, audio is not heard. Can you replay it from the beginning of the video with audio?
So, sir, I'll just give a call to Rajesh Arya, sir, once. Just give me a second.
Okay,
Narrate.
okay. What I'll do, I'll narrate it. So the
Yeah.
preparation of I'll- this is the video demonstrating the preparation of transthoracic probe. The transducer is the SS12 or the transthoracic or the penetrating transthoracic probes. Uh, yeah, Raju. Excuse me, I think I need to stop sharing as told by Rajiv to me. I don't know. Okay.
On the audio before you start the video.
No, I'm not being able to do that.
Because we would like to see the video.
Yes, I
with
think this is
audio.
I stopped sharing, Rajiv. Next, what do I do? Share content, okay. Yes. Income system, include system audio, okay. Okay, I've done it. Now I think it should work.
This is a video demonstrating the preparation of the transthoracic
Can you hear
probes.
it now?
The transducers we commonly use in
Yeah,
our OR
perfect now.
are the pediatric transthoracic probes, the S12-4 and the SA3 transthoracic probes. Now this is what we use, a sterile sleeve, a sterile jelly, 2 sterile rubber bands. These are usually taken from the CST department of our hospital. Now, the transthoracic probe is not sterile, but it is surface disinfected with 70% alcohol and 2% chlorhexidine prior to use. Now, the operator here you see is wearing a sterile surgical gown and gloves. The open end in the sleeve is rolled over to facilitate the passage of the transthoracic probe. Transthoracic probe is then fed into the epicardial sleeve. The sleeve is then firmly wrapped around the probe and a rubber band is applied. Now this rubber band will prevent seepage of the jelly beyond a particular point. Now the sleeve has a closed end. The operator will cut that closed end with the sterile scissor. Now sterile jelly is applied over the transducer head. So the jelly occupies a space between the transducer head and the inner surface of the sterile sheath. After which a second rubber band is applied to make the entire apparatus more secure. Now what you have is a transthoracic probe with a sterile covering ready for use. And always make sure there are no air pockets to enhance the contact between the transducer probe and the surface of the heart.
So this is the way we apply the probe. These are the the dummy on which the probe is shown how it is to be placed. And this is a video showing how clinically and practically we use in the operation room. Now coming specifically to the epi-aortic echo, and then it will be followed by epicardial echo. The epi-aortic echo, there were guidelines published by Catherine and Reeves and Dr. Madhav Swaminathan in 2007 in Journal of American Society of Echocardiography, JACE, regarding the epi-aortic ultrasonographic examination and their recommendations. When should we do epi-aortic? First, the question comes: when should we do it? We should identify the patients who are at increased risk of embolic stroke, the patient with the history of cerebral vascular incidences, a patient with history of peripheral vascular disease, because if the patient has got peripheral vascular disease, especially arterial thrombosis and all, they've got high chances of having thrombus or atheromas in the ascending aorta. and evidence of aortic atherosclerosis calcification by other imaging modalities. If we find that there is a atheromas in T in descending aorta, or MRI, CT scan, or chest X-ray even shows calcifications, those are the patients who have got high chances of atheromas or plaque in the ascending aorta. And when we handle, there are high chances of going into different parts of body, and these are the patients in which the epi-aortic examination should be done as far as possible. Now, anatomically, for echocardiographic examination, the aorta is divided into three parts. Ascending aorta is divided into three parts: the proximal, mid, and distal. If you see anatomically, the aorta is posterior to the aorta is the right pulmonary artery. The part of ascending aorta proximal to the right pulmonary artery is called the proximal aorta. Part of aorta distal to the right pulmonary artery is called which is just opposite the right pulmonary artery is called the mid part, and the part of aorta which is distal to the right pulmonary artery is the distal ascending aorta, and further to that is the proximal arch, which we must see in all the views. So, as recommended by the guidelines, there are 5 standard views which are to be taken. The first is the proximal ascending aortic aorta short axis view. Second is the mid ascending aorta short axis view, and distal ascending aorta short axis view. So, entire ascending aorta should be taken first into short axis view, then the entire aorta should be taken to long axis view, and then after that you should try to look for the aortic arch in long axis view, and looking for the great vessels originating from the aortic arch. Coming one by one for all these 5 standard views, aorta short axis examination. In short examination, we put the probe on the ascending aorta as proximal as possible towards the root of aorta. After, and with the orientation mark directed towards the patient's left shoulder. This orientation mark is very important because this will decide the right and left side of the body, and what we see on the screen, what is right, what is left. So the probe is placed as close as to the root of aorta, and we try to look for the short axis of the aorta as proximal as possible. Then after achieving this view, we slowly and gradually advance the probe distally towards the neck, and look for the aorta in short axis in mid ascending aorta, and then into distal ascending aorta towards the arch. And we try to look for the origin of innominate artery, and finally the proximal aortic arch. So in single stroke, starting from the root, you can go up to the arch, capturing all the views. And then as we see, the part closest to the probe is the anterior, part away on the screen is the posterior, on the left side is the right, and this is the left side. So we must know which wall we are looking at, so that we can give the information to the surgeon that this wall has got some problem or not. And the associated structure seen is the SVC on this side, and behind the aorta is the right pulmonary artery. So once you know all these structures, adjoining structures to aorta, then it becomes very easy to tell the surgeon that which wall is affected and which particular position is affected to be avoided for cannulation and other things. And in this same way, we can take the diameters of anterior posterior diameter and the lateral diameters. And whenever we do measurements, we must make sure that we are not oblique. Our probe has to be perpendicular. Ultrasound beam has to be perpendicular to the short axis of aorta. It should not go obliquely and giving us a false high values of diameter measurements. This is one example of what I just narrated. This is aorta in short axis, right pulmonary artery behind, and the superior vena cava. Same is seen here also, and a running loop. Then comes the aorta examination in the long axis. The probe is rotated to 90 degree. The probe direction, the larger diameter of the probe becomes parallel to the direction of aorta. That is, we rotate the probe to the 90 degree from the short axis examination. Then proximally, we look for the is present the sinus of Valsalva. Then sinotubular junction, aortic wall can be visualized on the proximal end. As we see here, we can look for the sinus of Valsalva. The aortic wall would be somewhere here. Sinuses would be here, sinotubular junction, and the ascending aorta. This is what we look proximally. The probe is then advanced gradually in the same long axis along the length of the aorta, changing the rotation and angulation according to the shape of the aorta. And finally, what we see is the aorta in this shape in the long axis, that is the proximal end, distal end. Here the arch would start, and main right pulmonary artery comes here. So entire full length of aorta can be visualized, which is difficult in the transesophageal echo, can be easily looked up in the long axis view. And this is how it looks in the long axis view. This is right pulmonary artery. The right pulmonary artery is superior vena cava, and the entire aorta is seen here. Similarly, if you go further down, further distal to the aorta, and just following the curvature of aorta, what we can see is the arch and the vessels arising from the arch. As you see, this is arch, and there would be the vessels arising. If you turn the probe little more, we can see the origin of the great vessels also. And if we come other way around from the root, if we direct the probe towards the left ventricle or LVOT, we can see the aortic wall in short axis. We'll come. We'll see that in the when we go for the epicardial examination. So other applications of this aortic echocardiography is that we can go for the measurements of different structures, different sizes of aorta at different levels. We can look for atheromas, which were the blind spots in the transesophageal echo. We can see very easily, and especially in the dissection patients, we can try to find out which is the true lumen, which is the false lumen. After the surgeon has cannulated the aorta, we can see whether the cannula is in the true lumen or false lumen, and we can avoid a lot of complications of false lumen cannulation with the epiaortic echo. So this is how we take the measurements in the short axis. This is transfer measurement, transverse diameter, and same way we can take anterior posterior diameter also from leading edge to the leading edge of intima. Then these are the few examples of atheromas. This is grade 1 atheroma, probably this is grade 2, this is grade 4 atheroma, and these are few. This is a transesophageal, just to complete the scenario for different types of atheroma. This is an ulcerated atheroma. This is ulcerated atheroma because the surface you can see has got ulcerations in it, very high chances of getting dislodged. This is mobile atheroma. You can see the mobility, and you must check after the surgery is complete whether this atheroma is still present there or not. These are different levels of dissections we can see. Dissection involving the root, dissection in the arch, and dissection in the type A dissection in the aorta. So after completing the epi-aortic examination, let us go for the epicardial echocardiographic examination. Epicardic is again the guidelines were given by Reeves and group in 2007, published in the Annals of Anesthesia and Analgesia, and JACE also. Indications they have set for epicardial echo is that whenever we are unable to perform a transesophageal examination, it means if there is esophageal stricture, varices, hiatus hernia, when especially in the pediatric patients where the pediatric TE probe is not possible, or in neonatal where the transesophageal echo is not possible, the neonatal or the micro probes are not available at most of the places, then this epicardial examinations become very easy, very handy, and can be done very easily. And when the quality of TE probe, TE images are not suitable, like ascending aorta, arch, and anterior structures of the heart. Suppose you want to see the free wall of the right ventricle and other things. Many a times the anterior structures are difficult to visualize with transesophageal echo. That time the epicardial echo comes as a rescue. So the guidelines have suggested the 7 views, that is epicardial aortic wall short axis, epicardial aortic wall long axis, epicardial left ventricular basal short axis, mid short axis, and long axis view. The next is the epicardial 2-chamber view and RV outflow tract view. So with all 7 these views, most of the structures of interest can be visualized easily. So let us see one by one how do we perform them, and what we see on the screen, and how we perform on the epicardial surface. So at different places you have to put the probe. The same probe you have to put at different places, directing it properly so that the image is a standard image which can be read by anybody. So first comes the aortic wall short axis view. This is the epicardial examination of aortic wall short axis view. In this, the probe is positioned at the aortic root above the aortic annulus. Just above the annulus, you put the probe. The orientation marker is pointed towards the patient's left and slightly rotated to 30 degrees so that we can have a good short axis view. And the structures seen are the aortic wall in all the three cusps and sinuses of aortic wall. The one which is closest to the probe is the right coronary cusp, which is opposite to the transesophageal because the right cusp is most distant on the screen from the probe. Then this side comes the non-coronary cusp and the left coronary cusp. And behind the aortic wall is the left atrium. So the measurements done in this view are you can measure the short axis, planimetry, the aortic wall area, any pathology, bicuspid wall, and all the leaflet pathologies you can very easily see in this view. I don't know why the videos are stopping after thing. Then the next is the aortic wall long axis view. Once you have seen this in aortic wall in the short axis, you need to upward turn the probe on the right surface of the aortic root in a way that it becomes parallel to the direction of flow. The orientation marker is slightly rotated clockwise and directed to patient's left. Now the ultrasound beam is directly posteriorly to visualize the alveoli in the aortic wall. As you see in this still picture, this is how the away from you is the aortic wall. This is the alveoli with the direction of flow, and this is aorta. So this is the long axis view of aortic wall, which we can see with the epicardial probe. And the structures seen are alveoli, aortic annulus, and the sinotubular junction and part of ascending aorta. And we can put a Doppler probe because the direction of flow and the direction of Doppler is quite parallel. And we can put a colored Doppler and do the grading of, as you see in this video, we can do the color Doppler and see the grading of how much is the aortic regurgitation or if there is stenotic jet coming. Everything can be seen in this view. And best part that is parallel to the direction of echocardiography or ultrasound. So the spectral Doppler measurements become very easy. Next is the LV basal short axis view. The probe is placed on the surface towards the apex, pointing towards the apex along the right ventricle. On the surface of right ventricle you put with the aim that your ultrasound beam is hitting the mitral wall and the basal part of the left ventricle. The structures seen are the right ventricle, which is approximately close to the probe, and distal to the right ventricle is the left ventricle with the mitral wall in the short axis, and the one close to you is the anterior mitral leaflet, and behind posteriorly it is the posterior mitral leaflet, as you can see in this video also. This is the right ventricle, and this is the left ventricle. The structures in a right ventricle, tricuspid wall in the near field, the mitral wall, leaflets, commissures in the distant field or the far field, and the mitral wall is very well seen in the short axis. We can put a color Doppler to quantify and quantitative and qualitative assessment of the mitral regurgitation and stenosis. We can see different leaflets, different scallops of the mitral wall leaflets, and decide whether the regurgitation is at P1, P2, P1, A1, or whatever the level of regurgitation, because its short axis gives you clear indication of the leaflet structures. Then come to the mid. From this, angulate the probe inferiorly and to the left of an apical direction along with the RV surface. So just rotate the probe on the RV surface, little distal and pointing it towards the apex, so that we are cutting the ultrasound beam is cutting the left ventricle in the mid part, and the structures in a septal wall of the left ventricle displayed on the left, followed by the anterior, lateral, and inferior. So this is the septal wall This is right ventricle, left ventricle. This becomes inferior because this is away from the probe. The wall closest to the probe is the anterior wall, and this side is the lateral wall. So the four walls of the left ventricle can be seen. Very good view to calculate the preload, afterload, contractility, regional wall motion abnormalities. We can assess the left ventricle, right ventricle areas, global LV functions, regional wall movement assessment. RV can be evaluated similarly as we are doing the left ventricle with the slight movement of the transducer probe, and this is how it looks on the screen. Next comes the left ventricle long axis view. From the ultrasound beam is angled superiorly and rotated towards the patient's right shoulder. Now the probe is rotated in the way that the pointer looks at the right shoulder of the patient. It means you have rotated the probe to the 90 degrees, and once you rotate the 90 degrees, it becomes quite similar to the parasternal long axis view which we see on the transthoracic echo. Just imagine that the probe is kept on the parasternal area in the transthoracic, and we have opened the chest. Now the same position, the probe is kept on the anterior surface of the right ventricle with a pointer pointing towards the right shoulder. And in this view, the structure seen are the left atrium, mitral wall, left ventricle, aortic wall, LVOT, and closest to the probe is the right ventricle, which we can see. So if you see the video, this is how it looks on the screen. Left atrium, papillary muscles, caudate tendon, everything can be seen very clearly in this view because the ultrasound beam is falling perpendicular to the caudate tendon papillary muscles. So measurement of new chordae, of there is a ruptured chordae, everything can be seen very well in this view. Next is the two-chamber view. Two-chamber view, like we do in the modified parasternal long axis view, where we want to see the left ventricle and left atrium. The probe is positioned towards the anterior surface of left ventricle, and further rotation of the transducer is done clockwise, so that our ultrasound beam is just hitting the left ventricle, left atrium, and the mitral wall. So this is a two-chamber view where this is left atrium and left ventricle and separated by the mitral wall. You can see play the video. It's not. Yeah, this is how it looks on the screen. The left atrium, mitral wall, and the caudate tendon. Again, in this view, the papillary muscle, the caudate tendon, the attachment to the mitral leaflet can easily be seen because the ultrasound is lying perpendicular to the surface of chordae. Next is the right ventricular outflow tract, and this right ventricular outflow tract view is quite similar to parasternal short axis view, what we see on the transthoracic echo. The probe is positioned over the right ventricular outflow tract and directing the ultrasound beam towards the patient's left shoulder. The structures seen are the right ventricular outflow tract, the pulmonary wall, the pulmonary artery, and aortic wall in short axis. Whenever we see the pulmonary wall in long axis, the aortic wall becomes short axis because both of them are perpendicular to each other. And we can put a Doppler, we can see the right ventricular pressures, we can RVSP, systolic pressure, pulmonary wall regurgitation, and all other things can be seen easily. We can put the Doppler and take the quantification of pulmonary stenosis. We can put color Doppler to look for pulmonary regurgitation stenosis. So this is how it looks on screen. This is pulmonary artery. This is pulmonary artery going here, the aortic wall in short axis, right ventricular outflow tract. So next to this is these are the standard 7 views which we have seen, and apart from that, certain views which can be modified, and as per requirement, the probe can be directed. Like tricuspid wall can be seen very easily. This right atrium, right ventricle, and the tricuspid wall. We can have a better view of the mitral wall by directing our ultrasound beam exclusively towards the mitral wall, adjusting the depth and the gain settings, and the complete structure of mitral wall can be seen. Similarly, tricuspid wall is easy to see in the short axis as well. We saw previously in the long axis and short axis also we can see pulmonary wall in a long axis as RVOT outflow track view. Left atrium can be visualized many times. It is required to see the left atrium, the appendage, the thrombus in that RVOT view we just saw. Now I give an example of a patient in which who came for the TOF repair, and we performed epicardial echo because TE was not available in that patient, and we had no option to perform. And this is uh, long axis view. This is left atrium, left ventricle. This was aorta which was overriding. They put a patch, and by putting a Doppler, we can see that there is no leak, there is no VSD left out, and all this can be very easily seen post-operatively immediately after the correction coming off bypass. You can see if there is any residual VSD, if there is any aortic regurgitation or any other complication can be then and there only seen. Same view, the RVOT patch you can see. You can take the pulmonary wall flows Doppler on the pulmonary wall. If there is any pulmonary stenosis, if there is any residual RVOT obstruction, or if there is regurgitation. But there are certain limitations of the epicardial echo. It requires a sternotomy because it is to be done on the surface. It does not permit the continuous monitoring. It requires interruption to the surgical field. The surgeon has to stop the surgery and we perform it, and then only they start it. And it requires two people to work, one on the probe and one on the machine. So it's a teamwork which is required. So if you see the clinical applications, there's a lot of places where epicardial echo has been proven to be much better in assessment. There are few papers published on this, especially for the anterior cardiac structures. You want to see if they're better seen with the epicardial echo. Now there are miniature probes are available which can see the coronary vessels, also the graft patency and anastomotic site. You can assess. We have got that in our hospital in Miracu, which can give you the assessment whether the anastomosis is working or not, how the flows in the anastomosis, coronary anastomosis. And even the coronaries, as you can see in this picture, you can see the coronaries, the flows in the coronaries, the size you can see. You can put a Doppler, you can take the flows into the coronary vessels. This is how the color Doppler will show the flow in the coronary. In the congenital cardiac surgery, it is 97.4%. It is people are satisfied, and 7% cases it required revision in the paper published by published in Annals of Thoracic Surgery. So the acceptance is quite good. 97% of people, times the reporting was satisfactory, and it made a change in the diagnosis and management of patient. How should we train our trainees for that? The training should participate in the evaluation of 25 epi-aortic or epicardial examination. There should be at least 5 of which must be personally done by the trainee under the direct supervision of an expert echocardiographer who has got an advanced level training. Then independent interpretation and application of echo should be only be performed once all training is complete, and then the advanced level of certificate can be given. Right now, we don't have any such certification in our Indian scenario, but our FTE certification, that is Fellowship in Transesophageal Echo, it requires that the candidate should have a good training of epicardial and epi-aortic echo as well. So to conclude, there are limitations in TE which can be overcome by intraoperative surface echo, that is epicardial epi-aortic echo. The surface echo provides more optimal image resolution when using high frequency probes. So you should be very clear that which probe you are using, and must use as far as possible high frequency probes, more than 4 megahertz or 5 megahertz. Then better echo windows for this provide better echo windows for imaging anterior structures like aorta, aortic wall, pulmonary arteries, and all. And epicardial imaging requires direct access to the anterior surface of the heart. So one has to be very careful about the infection part or the sterility part. And I must say that even the surgeon should be knowing and should be trained how to perform it. And cardiologist or anesthetist on the other end can operate on the machine. So this way, it's an entire teamwork which operates in the operation theater to give the final conclusion and final decision about the structures. I acknowledge the IACTA Eco Library, which we have published the 3 manuscripts by now, 2 in 2017 and one recently. Yesterday only we have published about epicardial echo by Dr. Kumar. And I thank Dr. Thomas Kaushi and Dr. Kumar who has helped and provided me few loops and other pictures for making this presentation. And in the end, I thank all of you for your patience listening. And I hope I could. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh, for that lovely presentation of epicardial and epi-aortic echocardiography. Very well done. Actually,
Thank you.
chat box also says excellent talk. Thank you for that. I think it is true. You have done a wonderful job. You started actually with physics, so explain how the transducer frequency influences the image quality and how you develop the image. And also you showed a video of how to do epicardial echo. That was well done. Followed by the 5 views for epi-aortic and 7 views for the epicardial with moving images. That's well done. And I really thank you for that. So we go on to the discussion section for the next 10 minutes. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask either unmuting yourself or through the chat box. So to kickstart the discussion, I would like to clarify or request Rajesh. To tell me, when you use the short axis of aorta with the mark towards the left shoulder, so the
Yes, sir.
aorta with the marker towards the left shoulder,
Yes.
the left of the aortic valve is left and right is right, isn't it? That's what I just wanted to confirm that it is.
No, when we put the probe on the near the aortic root, and we direct it towards the aortic wall, and slight rotation to 30 degrees, so that we have got exact short axis of aorta. The cusp which is closest to the probe is the
Is
right
right,
parameter.
correct.
So there is
No,
no.
I'm asking about the aortic wall in the aortic picture. Aortic valve, aortic short axis. Suppose you take the proximal ascending aorta.
Aorta, you mean to
What
say?
you see on the left is left of wall of the aorta or the right wall? That's
On the when you are facing the screen,
yes,
left
when
of
you are
your hand
facing.
is towards the right wall of aorta.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Okay,
confirm.
and your right hand is towards the left wall of aorta. The wall closest to the probe on the top of the screen is the anterior wall, and the bottom of the screen is inferior wall.
That is clear. That is clear. So thank you for clarification. The next question I want to ask is, do you think it is safe to do epicardial echocardiography if you want to look at the LV apical thrombus? Because with TE sometimes we are not sure what's happening. So do you recommend that we can see that using epicardial echo, or it's not safe?
No, it is quite safe because one of the disadvantage of the shortcoming of transesophageal echo is the apical foreshortening. I mean, we cannot see the apex because the heart is obliquely placed in the thorax,
Right,
and
exactly.
the apex most of the time, except in the two-chamber view where you can see the apex. Most of the time, you are able to see the apex in two-chamber view in the transesophageal. With the epicardial echo, it is very well and very easily seen because entire apex you can map with a epicardial echo, and by taking the transducer as close as you can take the short long axis both. In the long axis parasternal view, what we see, the long axis two-chamber view also, you can see the apex easily. And second part is that sometimes there is a confusion about the papillary muscle versus the clot or the thrombus in the LV apex.
Exactly.
So what I personally do in certain these cases, then I put a M mode on that, and in the M mode, if the size is contracting and relaxing, it is papillary muscle. If the size is fixed, it gives towards the clot. So this is how we differentiate the clot and the
no, only thing is I wanted to know whether it is safe. Is there any risk of dislodging thrombus if you are putting it on the apex?
No, there is not much risk. I mean, because we are not pressing anything. We are just touching to the extent. And second thing, if there is any doubt, one should fill the cardiotomy area with saline, just to take the air out of it, because air is enemy of ultrasound. So you take the air out, fill it with saline, and then put the probe and then rotate inside that water and get the better view.
Thank you, Rajesh, for that. And the
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. It's a nice, excellent presentation. What I have, this one, no, I wanted to add one point, sir. Hello,
Yes,
sir.
yes, we
Sir,
are.
other application is especially in the clearance of thromboembolic, pulmonary thromboembolisms. So distal you cannot be able to see in the T or other this one. This epicardial will help in the identifying the distal occlusions or this one, sir. Other one is stenosis, distal stenosis of the pulmonary vasculature and all we can make out. Is it? Yes, sir.
Yeah,
No, sir?
with transesophageal echo, we can see the division of main pulmonary artery right and left. And once beyond that, our echo doesn't give much information about the branching of right or left pulmonary artery, first, second, third level. But definitely we can put the epicardial probe on the pulmonary artery, go as distal as we can, and at least for first or second division, we can visualize if we are lucky. And if there is any stenosis, thrombus, or anything, once we can see the lumen, we can decide what it is. So definitely it has advantage because you have got a liberty of moving right and left, which is not there in the transesophageal echo.
Yeah. The question in the chat box asks is, do you have any experience on epicoronary probes?
Yes, we do have experience of epicoronary probes. Last year we purchased that MiraQ. That machine is a very costly machine, but it has two components. One is the probe ultrasound, which looks over the flow, and another is a pure ultrasound with a Doppler. So it's like a micro probe which we just put on the coronary, look for the lumen, look for the flows. We can sometimes it helps in finding out the coronary vessel as well. Many times it's a intramyocardial, or the fat is too much, you cannot find the coronary vessel. So you just put the probe on the heart and try to look for the coronaries, and it gives a good idea where the coronary lies. Once you have made the anastomosis, you can see the flows. You can see if there is too much of retrograde flow, why the flow is not going forward, because there is a native flow is too good. So all the flows in the native vessel, in the anastomotic site, or in the conduits, you can check. We do have the probe, and we sometimes we do check that also when we have doubt.
Sure. The next question is, can you give some information about sterilization solution, how to clean the probe? This is a question in the chat box.
Yeah, but sterilization is an issue because the probe tip normally we try to avoid with all these corrosive chemicals. But as shown by in the video by Kumar, if you use a sterile sheath, in my hospital many times we use a camera cover, what the laparoscopic people are using, or other. The same cover we use, because the length is quite good, and that's sterile, very easy to sterile. They come as a pre-sterilized also. So we use those camera covers for this. We put the rubber band so the jelly doesn't go away, and fill the distal end with jelly, and just close that, so that we can. The idea is to avoid air. Second is to not to touch the surface of the probe, which is not sterilized. Whatever we do, still we are not sure how much is sterilized, even if with the hypochlorite or other solutions, formaldehyde solutions.
Thank you,
good morning, Dr. Rajesh. Dr. Hiremat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
please.
good morning, sir. How are you?
Fine. In fact, it was really an excellent presentation wherein we surgeons, I think we should be oriented with those 3 views of the aortic and the 7 views of the epicardial echoes. I had one question wherein suppose if the atheromas are there on the aorta,
Yes.
And how do we plan wherein we are forced to put a vein graft, and can it be extended up to the carotid or the innominate and find a safer place there? What are any grading is there? Because I don't know that you did not mention. That's how we plan. Normally we go by our epicardial palpation, but as you told, quite number of times we miss it, and we go to the carotid or the innominate for proximal anastomosis. So is the grading same or different there?
No, the grading of atheromas is the same. Like 5 Kurt's classification is their grading.
So
That
irrespective
is
of whether
there.
iota or the innominate, it is same. Yeah.
To my experience, I've never seen anybody putting a proximal end of the conduit on the carotid or arch. Sometimes the people, if there is atheromas in the ascending aorta and you have to graft the circumflex or the PDA, so descending aorta graft sometimes on the proximal end they put on the descending aorta, so that they can avoid the ascending aorta because of the atheromas and other things. But definitely we can see the origin, we can see the flows. If the flow velocity is high, because we can use the Doppler also with the epicardial. If the flow velocities are high, then I would suggest that that carotid or innominate should not be used, because obviously the flow high velocity is because of obstruction, and we should not subject it. So apart from the structure, we must look for the velocities. We must use the Doppler. If there is turbulence seen on the Doppler flow, obviously there is some obstruction further into that vessel. But most of the time, our epi-aortic echo can give you soft areas where there are no plaques, and with your proximal devices there, like sieve-like device, you can put there without putting a clamp, and then you can put the proximal over there. That's what many times our surgeons do. If they find atheromas here and there, they put a sieve device. I don't know what you call it. That goes without putting a cross clamp, without putting a partial clamp. They can just make a puncture and put that device, and that device opens up, and then put proximal and take the device out. So that is what our surgeons do sometimes if there is a high risk of atheromas and we find all around it is atheromas. So wherever the soft spot they get, they put the proximals, or otherwise go for the total arterial no touch technique.
Yeah, that's another option. My second question is, you showed in the probe and sterilization technique, first you applied jelly and put it to that sleeve. And you showed one more way where you cut the sleeve and put sterile jelly. So it has a double sleeves, or what is? I did not understand.
No. It's a single sleeve. The entire thing, there is a single sleeve. The one end of the sleeve is closed. Okay, you put the probe from the open end, let it go till the close end. Okay. After that, on the proximal, just around 5-7 centimeters above the tip, you put a rubber band. Okay. After that, you open that closed end, put the jelly, and then wrap it around the probe, so that the first rubber band won't allow the jelly to go proximally towards the sleeve. Okay, so whatever jelly you are putting, that will remain in that 5 centimeter area, and then you cover the front and put another rubber band so that it doesn't come out of the open end.
So jelly doesn't touch the heart. Epicardial surface jelly doesn't touch at all.
Jelly doesn't touch the heart, not at all, because we have wrapped it around the probe on the front and the tip, and put another rubber band.
Okay. Yeah. It looked as if it was 2 layered, and first time you removed the first layer.
Yes.
And then put the jelly on that. Something
No. We put the jelly straight on the probe. We by putting the first rubber band, we make a pocket, sort of envelope sort of thing. Put the jelly and then close the envelope. Okay. So the jelly remains there.
Yeah. In our hospital, what we do is before this one only, we put the jelly and prepared sterility and all we prepared with the jelly only, sir.
Yes.
So there is no need of opening, because unnecessarily chances of this one infection and all, whatever you take this one, sir. Instead of that, chances are there. That's why without opening the proximal end, we put the jelly before preparing only, sir.
Yeah, that's another good option.
That's what we do.
So the innovative ideas will come with time as you start.
Because if you open chances, minimal chances are also is there, sir.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. I accept that.
That's what we do. And so the next question is, are there surgeons performing this in Delhi? where we can get this training or reflect on this? Dr. Minati Chaudhary, you know anybody who is doing epicardial echo in Delhi? All India Institute may be doing, I don't know. Next question is short axis view of LV for regional wall motion abnormality.
Yes.
Can you make LV look perfectly circled by epicardial echo?
Yes, definitely. I showed the basal and the mid LV short axis view. In those both views, they are absolutely. I mean, you can see the preloading, you can see the contractility, regional wall, everything can be seen easily on short axis view.
Dr. Hiremat, you have any other questions? Can I go to the next question?
Yes, sir. I have one more question. Rajesh, this regarding to know the dissection following cannulation or decannulation, how it will help us, especially in iotics with Marfan's and all. Sometimes we do face this challenge of getting it dissected either during cannulation or after decannulation. So will it help us in knowing exactly where the dissection is so that it can be handled immediately? How it can play a role?
Yes, definitely. I mean, once you are looking at the aorta, see in the Marfan's, the aorta is dilated. It's a very thin aorta, and once you try to cannulate, sometimes you cannulate wrongly, or there is the wall is so weak that it dissects out internally. So with the epi-aortic echo, you can very easily see the dissection flap at any level, starting from the root, starting from the involvement of the root till the arch, everything, anywhere if there is a flap, that can be easily seen. Second, you can use the Doppler, color Doppler in this. And color Doppler, if there is a flap, you'll find two lumen. You are confused which one is true, which one is false. The color Doppler will give you good idea that the true lumen will have a good flow, the false lumen will have a slow flow. And normally the false lumen is bigger in size, the true lumen is smaller in size, the true lumen is pulsating, the false lumen is not pulsating. So all that can be seen. And once I mean your cannula is in position, you can definitely with the almost certainty you can say that your cannula is in the true lumen or the false lumen. And definitely once you are putting this, at that moment you cannot see because you are performing the procedure on the heart. But after you putting the cardioplegia or the aortic cannulation, you can again recheck it whether there is something wrong or not. Other than the perfusionist telling you that the pressure is high or line pressure is high or other things. But epi-aortic will give you a good idea about everything.
I think so. Two more questions are there. ECG gating to diagnose coronary flow in systole and diastole, is it done by you? ECG gating to diagnose coronary flow in systole and diastole.
Yes, ECG gating is there with the machine also. I mean, we always put the ECG whenever we do any echo examination, or with the MiraQ machine which we have got for the coronary flows, that has got a ECG gating because that tells the flows in systole diastole. Same way when you are using a color Doppler, the systole diastole, the flow can be seen by different colors like blue, red color. There won't be any flow during systole. There will be flow during diastole. And with the color Doppler, it gives you good idea. Color Doppler and spectral Doppler gives good idea about systole, diastole. With the ECG gating is there.
Thank you for that. The last question of the day is standoff on these probes while using on the aorta. Do you need a standoff on these probes?
No, I didn't get the question, please.
It's not clear to me. Dr. Geeta is available. Dr. Geeta, you can directly ask the speaker. Please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes, Dr. Muralidhar, we do use the epicardial probe, which is attached to our PE machine itself. And the surgeon usually uses it, and normally we do pour water into the sleeve.
Yes.
And then the gel, and then we put it on. That way, it kind of a balloon at the bottom. Or you can use the the bag of the anesthesia machine that we use. We can cut and have that portion. That way, it gives a space in between, and we know how far is the depth that we're not pressing on too much. So it forms a little bubble on the top, and that is away from the wall.
Oh. Yeah, that's I got that.
I mean, you get the picture that you kind of see a quite it's a small circular box on top, and then the wall is seen. So you can easily see instead of pressing on it, and that's the standoff that we use.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it is.
got
It is,
it.
as I mentioned somewhere in the slides, that there should be a standoff of around 1 centimeter away from the structure if you are visualizing it,
Yeah, so
because
that
that
gives
much
it
distance
space to
is
see that
required.
the wall,
uh,
especially. Yeah.
yeah, that much distance is required for the ultrasound beam to go and come back and give the image to you. If it is too close, like in transesophageal echo, we have a problem in visualizing the coronary sinus because that's very absolutely close. So we retroflex the TE probe so that we can see the coronary sinus, so that the gap between the probe or the ultrasound transducer and the coronary sinus increases. Same way, some or the other way, you have to create at least 1 centimeter gap between the anterior wall of aorta and the probe to get the good view.
Thank you, Geeta, for that additional point. We are grateful to you.
I really enjoyed the talk today. It was very useful and very informative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
much. And we are past 5 minutes past 10 o'clock. I think time to close. Unless Rajesh wants to have a quick review of the Echo Library. Do you want to do that, Rajesh, within next 2 minutes? Rajesh would like to show the
I'll
library,
just
what are the benefits and what are the features. It's a very user-friendly website. It's extremely useful for everybody who is interested in echocardiography.
can you see the screen on the Eco Library?
Yes, we can.
So, guys, this is what we started in 2016. It is an academic endeavor with the of our association IACTA. This is the aim is to teach echocardiography and free access to people who want to learn echocardiography. And in short, I'll tell you what we do. It's a email-based system. We have got 3,800 members of this society right now across the globe. Apart from cardiac anesthetists, many general anesthetists, pediatrician, intensive care people, cardiac surgeons, cardiologists, all sort of people who just want to learn echo, they are member of it. And in short, what we do that we publish a weekly manuscript that is like yesterday only we published this echo manuscript, which has got certain questions and followed by their answers and certain videos supporting the text. And this comes every Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning on the to all the members on in their email box on their email. And after reading this, after asking the self-assessment of questions and answers, if anybody has any query, there is a discussion forum. You can write your comment here, and the expert or the author will answer, or any expert will answer on that. So this is the one part. Right now we are on once a month we publish, and we repeat on every Saturday the same thing. Every month we repeat the next one. By now, we have published around 140 manuscripts on this, covering all the basic structures, pathologies, artifacts, and everything. 3D also we have covered. Now we are on the epicardial echo, and then we will be covering the transthoracic other things. So this is just the 25% part of it. Next, what we perform is then midway quiz, in which on every Tuesday, 2 o'clock Indian time, we send a media, that is either the video clip uh, or a picture, and we ask a question about it with 4 options. All the registered members, they can participate in the quiz, and they can choose their answer and submit the answer. 24 hours is given for to participate, and on Wednesday at 2 o'clock Indian time, we release the answer with the explanation with how many people participated, how many were right and how many were wrong, and why the right answer is right and why the wrong is wrong. We give all the explanations with references, and further we say that if you want to read more about this topic, you go to the this particular chapter or manuscript on the Echo Library, direct hyperlink, click on that and that chapter will open. And the person who gives a correct right answer first to the quiz is declared as the winner of the week. Like Eric was the winner on this Tuesday's quiz, and we shows the person's photograph for a week, and this is how it goes. So this again becomes 25-30% of the Echo Library. This is self-assessment and training and teaching. Then we come to the basics, like all the calculations are there on the echo. If you are performing an echo and you want to know how to calculate the mitral stenosis, so press the mitral stenosis by pressure half time. This is how the image will come. How to get the image is written in the bottom. And once you get this Doppler graph on the screen, where to put the cursor and whatever the measurement comes. Suppose your measurement comes around 170 milliseconds. You enter it and calculate, it gives the mitral wall area. Similarly, we have got all possible calculations: aortic regurgitation, aortic stenosis, mitral regurgitation, hemodynamic calculations, even DPDT. If you are calculating DPDT, how to perform the DPDT mitral regurgitation graph, where to put at 1 meter and 3 meter and calculate the time. And if it comes to say 800, then it gives um, calculate and you get the DPDT on the screen. I mean, all the calculations, cardiac output, stroke volume, SVR, PVR, uh, all things are there on the website. Then we have got certain reference books. These are not the real books. These are the thumbnails of the books which are recommended to read to learn echocardiography. Then we have got normal values. If you are performing any exam, so TE exam or echocardiography exam, so normal values of almost all the structures and the chambers is given on the screen. Then comes abnormal values based on the guidelines of European and American Society. We have got mild, moderate, severe chamber size difference, or the disease like mitral stenosis, mild, moderate, severe, tricuspid wall, aortic wall. All the values are given here. And further to that, prosthetic valves. Many times we have to assess the prosthetic valves at a different position. So all the possible companies, prosthetic valve, their area, their normal gradient, abnormal gradient, everything, all the possible valves, the information is provided on the screen. Then it comes the submission. We invite submissions. If you got interesting echo or a manuscript, you submit. Submission is online, and we go for a peer review by 3 experts. Out of them, at least 2 are board certified experts. After the review, we publish and we inform the author, and with the name and name of authors, we publish online every Saturday. Then this thing was started in 2018. That we are conducting the TE workshop. Dr. Murli is the in charge of that every year. And whatever the conference videos are there, uh, we have separated them out lecture wise, and we have posted. So anybody wants to see any of the conference video, just need to click on the hyperlink and that video will play. So all the conferences, eco conferences of IACTA are there on this 2019. Very shortly we'll be putting the 2020 also. So entire conference you can watch again on Eco Library. We have got a robust editorial board with the Dr. Kumar as the present chief editor, Dr. Tempe as the chairman of the board. I'm the ex or the past editor. We have got 3 associate editors, Dr. Naresh, Hema, and Jivanandam. We have got IACTA president as an advisor, Dr. Yatin Mehta as an advisor, and Dr. Naman Shastri, Dean Eco, as advisor. We have got international faculty members on board. You can see Dr. Naveen Nanda, and most of the internationally renowned people are there on the board. And we have got a national members also on the board, which to whom we keep on talking and taking their advice. So this is what a comprehensive and all at one place solution for any echocardiographic examination one wants to do. The membership is free. You can if you see, we have got some 492 pages, 8 members on a page, so it's around 3,800 members on our Eco Library. And all this material on Eco Library is free to download. Anybody can download these text, these videos, these pictures, and make their own library of their interest. So we are very liberal about spreading knowledge. As a basic principle of IACTA, we don't restrict on the spreading of knowledge, research, and everything. So download is free, and anything can be copied and pasted at your own level. And we have got a copyright from the authors to make it free to the public as well. The search engine is there if you want to search for mitral stenosis. Just press and all manuscripts related to mitral stenosis will open. You can click to anyone, and you can completely watch that manuscript, read it. All the manuscripts are, I mean, the previous manuscripts and everything, starting from the day one till today, like 4.5 years. You can watch by pressing the previous, or there is a list of all manuscripts published. Uh, you can click to any particular. You can choose your topic of interest, and you can watch that. All these videos and audios or still pictures are free to download. So this is what it is. We invite and as a goodwill gesture, yesterday we had a meeting with Dr. Hiramat from the Cardiac Surgery Society Secretary, and we have offered it absolutely free to all the members of Cardiac Surgery Society, which he is, I think, very happy about it, because now the surgeons also need to know the echocardiography as they go for more complex procedures. Thanks, Dr. Murli, for giving me a chance to present this academic endeavor, and hope people will enjoy it.
Thank you. I should acknowledge that you have done a wonderful job in this creating this IACTA Echo Library, and Dr. Kumar is following your footsteps. Excellent. It's being done very well, and I am really pleased, and I would like to thank you for that. And with this, I would like to end the session. We are overshot the time by about close to 20 minutes. So please join us tomorrow for the critical care cardiac anesthesia session. And thank you so much. Enjoy your holiday Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Rajesh
you,
and
Dr.
Dr. Murli.
Hiramat,
Thank you once
for
again.
being with us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this.
Thank
Your presence means a lot to us. Thank you.
Sir, we'll see that all the cardiac surgeons join, sir. It's amazing work what Rajesh and you people are taking out. Definitely we'll do this. We'll take
Thank
it
you,
forward.
sir. I'll send you the mail and the link how to become a member of it. Free to all surgeons.
Done. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, thank you. Bye. Good day, sir.